Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. This morning, I'm joined by Andy Field, our city's Director of Park and Recreation, Michael Ruiz, our Chief Park Ranger, Jill Wyatt, the President of the Peninsula Youth Softball. We'll also have two of our city's Deputy Chief Operating Officers, Christina Peralta and Alia Corey, as well as various stakeholders from parks all across our great city. We're here in the heart of Balboa Park at Mingay International Museum. Not only is this an enriching place for locals and visitors alike to experience a phenomenal cultural institution, but it's also one of the museums and among the many cultural institutions in our city's crown jewel that have been impacted by homeless encampments. Encampments in Palm Canyon, right here over my shoulder, have become increasingly problematic. A number of people experiencing homelessness regularly camp in and sleep around the Alcazar Garden and its parking lot. They leave piles of trash. They use the area as a bathroom, and they sometimes appear in the park without any clothes on. Guests and staff have reported being followed or yelled at by unsheltered individuals. Museum staff often have to wake someone sleeping in the doorway or deal with someone bothering museum visitors. They say they feel unsafe walking to their cars, and this is not what these folks signed up for. And that's precisely why the City Council must pass the Unsafe Camping Ordinance this coming Tuesday. This ordinance prohibits tent encampments in all public spaces in the city of San Diego when there are shelter beds available. And it will specifically prohibit tent encampments here in Balboa Park and in other parks throughout our city, whether or not shelter is available. This park, like all of our parks, are not a homeless shelter. It's not a place to live. It's not a giant toilet. It is not a trash dump. The people creating these impacts in the park belong in our city's shelters. That's where they can be safe, where they can get connected to services and be put on a path toward housing. But as our parks teams will tell you, the vast majority of these individuals refuse help, and that's unacceptable. Now, as I've said, we will continue the work of getting folks housed through our outreach and shelter system, along with the Unsafe Camping Ordinance. We will soon initiate our safe sleeping program to get hundreds of more people off the streets, connected to services, and on a path to permanent housing. And on Tuesday, we will also present our exhaustive shelter strategy with both short, long-term, and medium-term solutions. Now, before I hand it over to other speakers who will detail the impacts of the encampments in our parks and open spaces, I want to point out some of the images on the posters you see behind me. There's a large image of a burned-out bathroom here in Balboa Park. Now, unfortunately, this is not a rare occurrence. Quite on the contrary, serious vandalism of our parks' bathrooms happen on nearly a daily basis. There are other images from parks and open spaces across our city. This is what our city's parks employees have to deal with on a daily basis. We show these not to embarrass or to stigmatize people, but it's important for people to understand the realities of what is happening in our city and what we must do to preserve park quality for everyone's enjoyment. There are also indications of serious mental illness and drug addiction that add to our challenge. And we can't help these people unless they say yes. The Unsafe Camping Ordinance is another tool to get folks to say yes. And I urge the City Council to pass it and send it to my desk on Tuesday for signature. With that, I'd like to turn the podium over to the Director of our Parks and Recreation Department, Andy Field. Andy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good morning, everyone. First, I'd like to share a little bit about our park system. This is the heart and soul of San Diego. From here in Balboa Park and other crown jewels, including Mission Bay Park, Mission Trails Regional Park, our beaches and shoreline parks, our community parks, even our open space canyons and preservation areas, we have numerous parks that are impacted routinely by the impacts of those who unsafely camp. I can tell you that that impact is significant. I'm here to detail that for you this morning. Every day, our staff approach our parks and experience a number of things that are clearly unsafe, including drug paraphernalia, hypodermic needles, weapons, fires, aggressive dogs, human waste, soiled clothing and filth and trash, stolen property, prostitution, vandalism, damage to restrooms and playgrounds, non-functioning light fixtures, damaged irrigation systems, and destruction to our natural areas, including our trails and preservation areas. Our teams are cleaning park restrooms around the city on a daily basis, only to return the next day, or even later that same day, to observe that the restrooms are again vandalized, covered in filth and human waste. Toilets and sinks and soap dispensers are destroyed, smashed, covered in feces, or otherwise damaged. Sinks are used as personal showers for hygiene, with trash, used clothing, and puddles of dirty water left behind. Meanwhile, our staff have been subject to attacks, threats of violence, and aggressive encounters with people, all while they are just trying to do their job. We frequently hear from parents and coaches that their children are scared to enter our community park restrooms, that encampments pose a safety concern for the teams and players that utilize our parks when they just want to play a game and go out and enjoy the field and enjoy being on a playground. And it's the same across our city, from Mira Mesa to Linda Vista, Ocean Beach, City Heights, Chollas Creek, southeastern San Diego, the South Bay, San Ysidro, Barrio Logan. All throughout our city, this problem persists. In open space areas, our park rangers make about a dozen contacts a week with people that are living in encampments, in canyons, and other unsafe locations. The rangers then work with fellow departments to help offer them services and help, which is true even here in Balboa Park. More often than not, the offer for shelter and for services is turned down. In response to the impacts of these encampments, we've increased shifts for our grounds maintenance workers, custodial staff, and others who remove trash and clean those bathrooms as frequently as possible. We've increased coordination between our ranger staff and the San Diego Police Department to address these areas. We deployed security guards to monitor the activity around encampments and provide an extra layer of security, especially at recreation centers and other locations of public gathering in the parks. We've had to close some restrooms overnight because we can't keep up with the amount of damage and destruction that we're seeing at our facilities. All of this comes at a cost. It's a financial cost for resources to repair and maintain restrooms and park fixtures and park features that are adversely impacted by unsafe camping. It's a cost to those who want to visit our park system to enjoy the natural beauty, bring their children to play, and safely use a public bathroom. It's a cost to our employees who take pride in caring for your parks every day and find themselves repeatedly addressing vandalism and damage to park amenities and resources every day. What we're seeing is truly not acceptable, not in San Diego and not anywhere else. Adding more resources is certainly helping, and we thank the mayor and the council for helping provide those resources, but it's not fully solving the problem. We are grateful for the support of the mayor and our city leaders who are looking at ways to address the crisis, and make no mistake, it is truly a crisis. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and with that, I'd like to introduce our Chief Park Ranger, Michael Ruiz. Michael?
Thank you, Andy, and thank you, Mayor Gloria. I began my career here in Balboa Park in 1993 as a park ranger. And since that time, the negative impacts to our natural areas, our waterways, and our parks is like nothing myself and my staff have ever seen over the last 20 years. We regularly see illegal fires, damage to park facilities, and what is most concerning is neighbors are afraid to use our parks. Our park staff are being assaulted for trying to clean the restrooms in our park facilities. As park rangers, we take tremendous pride in helping visitors appreciate and protect our park facilities and our natural and our cultural heritage. Sadly, when our park staff offer assistance and services to those living in encampments, the answer is often no. Rather than accepting assistance, they choose to make public parks their home. People are choosing the lifestyle for a variety of reasons, and in most cases, they desperately need the help. Every day, our park staff are submitting incident reports and reporting issues they encounter in our parks. Around Balboa Park, Our park rangers are spending 3 hours or more each day removing encampments from our historic arcades, buildings, and gardens where there is feces, urine, and debris left every morning. In our Tri-Canyon open space areas, Marion Bear, Rose Canyon, and Tecolote, there are on average 20 to 30 active encampments. We have brought in contractors to assist with cleaning up of the illegal dumps and debris left by encampments, and we work with community organizations to do monthly cleanups. And we also work with the police department to increase patrols in these areas. At our river parks, more than 80% of our park staff is focused on dealing with encampments. That is a significant amount of time that could be used to help in the education of school programs or the restoration of habitat in our river parks. Across our park systems, our park rangers and our maintenance staff are frequently encountered increased aggression and hostilities from those living in encampments. In fact, our maintenance staff in Mission Bay Park recently were attacked and injured by an individual experiencing homelessness. That maintenance staff had to use their leaf blower to help stop the attack. Our response times to daily maintenance and normal duties have increased because of the increased need for encampment abatement throughout our park system. Our staff can no longer work alone, and they have to work in teams of 2 or more, and we've hired security guards for our own safety. In these areas, our request for police assistance has increased approximately 80% since spring of last year. This year, our department's budget request includes the addition of 6 park rangers. For the first time ever, the park ranger program will be focusing on our community and neighborhood parks, not just our regional and open space parks. And that's because the safety concerns and the impact of encampments create in our parks on a daily basis. We appreciate our city leaders taking the steps to address the bigger picture and supporting our teams in ensuring that parks are safe for everyone. Now, I would like to introduce Jill Wyatt with Peninsula Youth Softball up next.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Mary Gloria. Good morning. My name is Jill Wyatt, and I am the president of Peninsula Youth Softball Association, and I'm here to represent our 375 families that participate as active users of Robb Field and Ocean Beach. Moreover, I represent the girls, ages 5 to 15, that use those park facilities daily. I'd like to applaud Councilmember Whitburn for creating and Mayor Gloria for supporting the Unsafe Camping Ordinance, and I'd like to urge its support by our community members and by the City Council. When you first visit Robb Field, you're struck by its oceanfront, picturesque setting, usually accompanied by perfect weather. But quickly, our eyes narrow to a park that has been overridden with homelessness. It's human nature. If you give me an inch, I'm going to take a mile. And what began years ago as a few campers has grown into an uncontrollable problem. Parking lots filled with RVs, open grass areas filled with full-size tents arranged in villages, bleachers consumed by sleeping bags and shopping carts. It's part of our daily routine. We arrive at a practice or a game. We have the girls wait aside while we try to safely clear the campers. We grab the trash pickers to pick up the drug paraphernalia and simply endure the stench of stale urine throughout the games. Again, I applaud this administration for taking action because the reality is that something really bad is going to happen to one of our families, and shame on us if we let that be the catalyst for change. The conditions of these encampments are unsafe and unhealthy, and our bleachers are not beds. Our parks are not homes, and it's time we claim them for the active use for which they were intended. Thank you.
Jill, thank you for those comments and for your leadership in the Peninsula community with our youth. Of course, to Ranger Ruiz and to our director, Andy Field, you've heard, I think, important testimony about why the Unsafe Camping Ordinance is so important. I recognize that there has to be a broader context. A lot of folks say, where will they go? Well, the answer is that in the last 2 years, the city of San Diego has increased our shelter capacity by 70%. Along with Tuesday's action on the Unsafe Camping Ordinance, we're proposing a comprehensive shelter strategy that would immediately increase shelter capacity by several hundred more slots with the introduction of our Safe Sleeping program. We are providing tremendous amount of resources in outreach and shelter and permanent supportive housing for the individuals who have to find themselves on the streets. As I've mentioned, when we provide these resources, the answer when they're offered cannot be no. The taxpayers of this city are anticipated to spend over $200 million in the upcoming fiscal year in responding to our homelessness crisis. For that investment, it is reasonable to expect that you have free access to your parks throughout this city to be used by those very same taxpayers. I think this is a reasonable exchange, and I encourage the City Council to adopt this ordinance and empower me and my administration to reclaim our sidewalks, our parks, our beaches, and the other places that we've seen overrun with encampments. We will continue to pursue policies to increase the amount of housing in communities all across the city, and we'll make sure that many of those units are reserved for very low-income individuals. But again, we are making tremendous efforts, tremendous investments, and we expect folks to be able to utilize these resources. The last thing I want to say is that in the coverage of this discussion, I want to point out that we are acting on this in a comprehensive fashion. You've heard much testimony this morning about the mental illness and substance abuse nature of this particular problem, and those are no lies. That is the reality of what we're seeing, and particularly why we're so animated on this parks issue. What you've seen is the city lead the rest of the state by advocating for important mental health reforms in Sacramento, things like the creation of Care Court and the passage of a conservatorship reform bill that would take people who are so mentally ill that they don't know that they're sick and help connect them to services. You've seen our city sponsor legislation to address the fentanyl crisis with the vigor that is necessary. And so whether it's providing outreach, shelter, and housing on the local level, to advocating in Sacramento for mental health and substance abuse reforms, to working in Washington, D.C. to get our fair share of federal resources, this is an all-hands-on-deck moment. We're working in every possible way that we can, and we need folks who are on our streets to avail themselves of the services. If they choose not to do that, we have to have another intervention. But in the meantime, what we must expect for them is that they not utilize our parks as toilets, that they not discard litter all over our parks, that they disrupt the play of our children, who is the future of our cities. So you understand why I'm passionate about this issue, you understand why Councilmember Whitburn has proposed this, and you understand why we absolutely must pass this ordinance on Tuesday. I look forward to presenting the ordinance and our comprehensive shelter strategy on Tuesday, and I'm optimistic about the council's consideration. The status quo is unsustainable. We have to make a change. The change is the Unsafe Camping Ordinance and our Safe Sleeping Initiative. Appreciate you all being here. Dave, should we break here or take questions? Yeah, I'm happy to take a few questions for folks, or we can do it one-on-one, whatever way you guys prefer. Yes, ma'am.
Obviously, this probably wasn't the designated site for this press conference. Can you talk a little bit about where it was supposed to be and why it was moved?
Well, we always intended to do it at a park. We also want the opportunity to share our point of view. We recognize that there are people in our community, as bizarre as it may seem, who support encampments. And they cannot allow their voices to the minority, the small minority they are, drown out the voices of the vast majority of the people of the city who do not support encampments. Now, I've been challenged by that suggestion, but let me go deeper. Some of the individuals who are opposing this ordinance are the same people in court suing the city of San Diego to block hundreds of millions of dollars that would fund our homeless shelter system. That's a fact. The fact that they are opposing that, the very resources that they are calling for to fund a plan, they're blocking it. There's no other way to describe that than someone who supports encampments. Again, they are a tiny majority. Again, they are a tiny minority of the city. The vast majority of people in San Diego want basic order in our public spaces. They expect to be able to walk on sidewalks unobstructed. They expect to be able to get their children to school safely. They expect to be able to use our parks in a hygienic and clean and safe way. While there may be some who have a differing point of view, they are wrong, and they will not rule the day in this city. Others? Anyone else? Okay. Yes.
Like for the new that the government
Mm-hmm.
is going to do with the ordinance passed, is going to be here
Yes, so I would refer you to the comprehensive shelter strategy that was published on the city's website yesterday, but the specific and immediate reaction will be the standing up of 2 safe sleeping sites in Balboa Park on the edges of the park. The first location is at 20th and B. It's currently a city maintenance yard. It has previously been used for this same use back in 2017 when we had a hepatitis outbreak in the city and it was necessary to deploy that. We believe that we can stand that up by no later than July 1st. So if the council adopts this on June 13th, we believe that we can have this first safe sleeping site open by July 1st. The second safe sleeping site is what is known as Lot O. It's just south of the Naval Hospital. Many of your viewers would be familiar with it if they've driven north on the 5 freeway. They'll see it just to their right-hand side. It's currently a little bit too many, there's too many weeds and a little bit too much graffiti out there. We will clear that up and we'll make it suitable for camping. These are temporary locations. I want to be very clear. Our city's charter does restrict the use of parkland for anything other than park uses. And so our expectation is, because those sites are owned by the city and readily deployable, that we can stand those up in a matter of days, weeks, and have them available. Capacity at 2 sites combined is roughly 534 tents, potentially more people. And so we believe we can do that. That's the short term. When you look at the comprehensive shelter strategy, what you will see is a midterm option to relocate those 2 lots into another location, and then a long-term vision for how we can have that kind of size and scale in terms of offerings, so that anyone who wants to say that they are willing to come off the streets, that will have a resource available to them. Again, this is not a short-term thing like what was done in the past for just a few weeks at 20th and B. This is a long-term commitment by this city to provide resources for vulnerable and sick individuals, to give them a better place to go than the sidewalk. And again, our expectation is when those resources are available, they must take them.
Thank you, everybody.
Very good. Sure.
If for any reason you ask the homeless if you don't have like a bed
Mhm.
for them, what is the radio that they can move encampment like far from the park and school? You have like, oh, it needs to be like 13 miles?
The ordinance is currently drafted, essentially, you need to look at it because it's a bit more. It says that in the permanently prohibited areas, right? So you have a prohibition when beds are available, but in specific sites where we believe that there's an extreme need for health and safety, so we're talking about schools, parks, shelters, waterways, canyons. In those instances, camping will never be permitted. The distances, generally speaking, have been described as 2 blocks. The ordinance describes it differently for different sensitive sites. But at the end of the day, they will not be able to camp there at any time. And when a bed is available elsewhere in the city, they also will not be permitted to camp at any time.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys.